did, yeah. He said, my mum and two sisters were sharing a car with me and they've had to pack the job in as well. Can they come back as well?
It's because it's really hard to leave a bag of nails for somebody who you've got to say, look, I've
Yeah.
left you a bag of nails. Mark, welcome back to The Rest is Lean. This is the second half of our conversation, ferreting about in your leadership experiences. Thank you for the first half. Let's get deeper and we'll crack on with the questions.
Yeah, definitely. Let's do it. But just to let everybody know, we did record them in one session. That's why we didn't get changed.
Now, you mentioned superpowers. Do you want to tell us your superpower? How do you feel about that?
So certainly from a leadership perspective, I create high performing teams and I don't find that hard. And it links to the things that we talked about. But some of the things we haven't talked about, I'm very honest and open. I think there's too much going on in life if you want to live a balanced life to try and dance around stuff. So I'm very open and honest with my dialogue and approachable. I am data driven is the other part. And I think those two things coming together, I think, if you're data driven and invest in leadership, whatever industry you're in, that can really help. But I also,
Yeah.
as part of that, I bring those two things together and come back to purpose, people, and process. What's the purpose of the organization? What are people's role within that? Do we have the processes that work? If we don't, then you need to empower the people and have the right people to improve those processes.
Yeah.
And you know what? That sounds simple, but it falls apart because people don't have the purpose. They don't understand their department's role in the purpose. They have poor processes and they don't have the space or the autonomy to improve them. Maybe you've got the wrong people. Maybe the people aren't working together. So it's the bits that join all those things together that are key to making it work. I think, but overriding all that, I think one of my superpowers then is, and this has been said to me in the last few years quite a few times, I'm very calm. And I think this has come with, I mean, from the early mark that you saw that, as you say, 16 hours a day, literally, checking the SPC chart on every process personally,
Yeah.
um, uh, to who I am now that is very calm. And I can walk in a factory, I can see the shop floor. And if you tell me what the KPIs are, if they're measured correctly, I can tell you every metric, like pretty close across the board within a few hours. So I see and hear very, very quickly and understand the business. And that's probably now through experience, it's a superpower I didn't have 10 years ago.
Have you managed to pass that on? Is that innate to you and you can't unpick that wiring, or can you model it for other people to
No, I
get
think
it?
you can. I think this is a book. It's going to come out. So I just haven't got around to it yet. But I've coached a lot of what I call my Tapestry of Leadership, right?
Right.
So I've been in businesses that were renowned for micromanaging, which again, back to poor leadership, is what delivers short-term results, kills long-term results, right?
Yeah.
But my Tapestry of Leadership, again, imagine the square of the screen, right? So imagine you've got time across the bottom and all the things that you're trying to do on the vertical. The
Yeah.
micromanager dictates all of these things, right? And says, I'm going to check you on this. And then today checks you on that. And tomorrow checks you on this, right? And then what you just do is you just do as you're told, right?
Yeah.
Now, what the better leader does is they might ask you about this. And it's about knowing what not to do as much as is knowing what to do. So you might talk to somebody about this today. And tomorrow you might consciously say, not going to talk to that for the next. I'm going to leave that go. Right? They're exploring something there. I'm going to let it's a two-way door. They can't make a mistake that's going to hurt. And
Yeah.
we'll let them play with that one. But this one here, I'm going to ask. And now I'm going to talk to them about this one here. And what people
Yeah.
start to do is they start to think for themselves, because actually I'm not trying to just answer my boss's questions here. And you're giving them input. You're not telling them to come back to you and answer this to me by that time and give me that. You're giving them thoughts, you're telling them stories, you're giving them experience that relates to the things that they're working on. You're not asking them, unless it's really important you do, you got a customer issue, a safety issue, you need to be really
Yeah.
clear,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But on the other stuff, and then what you do is you end up building a much bigger tapestry, because people
Yeah.
start to look for things outside your box and you're not limiting it by your own experience, by your own prejudices in terms of what you want to focus on. You're letting them understand the business and
Gotcha.
actually build a bigger tapestry for you. And I've always said, I know when teams are really performing at a high level, that when they bring me the good surprises,
Yeah.
right? I go, I wasn't expecting that. And they've just brought me something that I've gone, wow, that's really, and that's what excites you.
That tapestry analogy I like, because it
I
talks
stopped you
about
before. Yeah.
because it talks about tugging at threads. I'm a strong believer that you're selective in the threads you tug at, and you don't tug too many at once, and you don't keep tugging the same thread. And maybe even there is a slight pattern to the threads you tug. But thinking back to your SQDCP, I can predict the metrics very quickly. Do you think there becomes a skill in knowing which threads to tug for the most benefit for the individual and or for the business?
Yeah, I think that's really true. There's a lot of things that come into this. We first of all said that people can't concentrate on more than, 3 to 7, 5 to 7 things, right? So I think that's true as well. I think that's always a challenge in operations because we have so many metrics, right? And everyone is important. That's one of the challenges I've had in the past. Everyone is important, right? But within those metrics, that's where I've found a lot of my treasure in the past, to use a word that I've adopted from you 30 years ago, about problems being treasures. I still carry with me. But let's just think through one of my favorites. Absenteeism, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's many good things that come in terms of absenteeism, knowing your team, talking to your team, creating an environment that's engaging, them knowing their tasks, them feeling that they can deliver the tasks, that the process works for them. There's all that stuff that you need to do, right? However, if you've got absenteeism anywhere more than 3 or 4%, which is bad, right? It's not world class. And I've driven businesses honestly consistently. I've picked up businesses at 10%, driven them to 2%, right? Like every single business I've been in, I've been able to drive metrics to whatever the different countries, different levels, right? But the first thing, if it's a high level, the return to work interview, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
doing it well. And that, because that's where you
Yeah.
find out the truth,
Seek to understand.
seek to understand and build hearts and minds, like win hearts and minds, right? Like, and if you train your leaders to do really good return to work interviews where you really want to understand from your employees what truly was the reason for their absence, and create a safe space where you can have that conversation, and actually you might not, you're going to take the decision not to penalize them, even if that was an opportunity for you you use it for truly what it's intended to be, to get under the skin. If you do that consistently and every employee has a return to work interview and you get under the skin of why they were off and actually go follow up on those things,
Yeah.
you will halve your absence in 3 months.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Because you are creating a true Pareto of specific causes.
And you know what? They're very consistent. And there'll be two sides. One will be some internal stuff. The other one might be because I can, because it hasn't been managed in a long time.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
And also that it's not a team environment. Yeah, that conversation say, look, it did let the team down yesterday. The manager that doesn't have a face to face, it's easy to disrespect somebody that you've never talked to, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you just had that conversation, that's 20% of your absence gone. If you then talk
Yeah.
about the why, that's another 20% of your absence, and then the other 10% is much more nuanced, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And I
I,
guarantee it. I've done it for 25 years after I found it back in the first factory that we talked about. Found out why. It's a tool that just wins every time.
It's funny, face to face is so important. So I was working with a business about a year ago where there were two strong team leaders who never had, on opposite shifts, never had a face to face handover yet. And they were constantly throwing a bag of nails across to each other. Yeah. Now my view isn't, don't train them to be better team leaders. Get them walking each other around face to face, because it's really hard to leave a bag of nails for somebody who you've got to say, look, I've
Yeah,
left you a bag of nails.
I like 100%. For people in e-commerce in particular, very seasonal businesses, not just e-commerce, but e-commerce is the great seasonal business, rapid volumes in the peak periods. I was in a business where in high agency numbers, right, in that environment, where after 10 weeks, only 10% of the agency that started were left in terms of
Yeah.
attrition. And that's not uncommon in e-commerce businesses, that people, for various reasons, jump to another business. They know it's peak season, so they drop off early, like a million reasons. And the business prepped really well for peak. It prepped everything. Like it knew how many minutes it would take to microwave everybody's lunches in a building of thousands of people, right? Like to make sure that they all got their lunch early in the break, and you would bring in like every finite plan, a book this thick for every peak, but
Yeah.
still high attrition. So I was thinking, like, how can I help my team? What's the most important? We got these brilliant plans. We work in detail. I can micromanage the plan, but what's the biggest impact I can have? And I stepped back, and stepping back is so important. We could talk about that all day as well. But I stepped back and went, my team are talented. We've got a really good business plan of how we manage peak. We've got a book that you follow, right? It's a really good process that we prep for. How can I help them the most? I can stop attrition. Because if they don't keep hiring people that they've already hired,
Yeah.
so how do I stop attrition of all these temps? So
Yeah.
the first thing I did was, because we were at the start of leading into peak at this point, is I decided to phone every single person that hadn't turned up. And this was a building with thousands of employees. I'm talking not hundreds, thousands. I sat on a phone. I said, you get on, you know the plan, you're executing the plan. I'm going to talk to people and find out. All right. First call I made, you haven't come in today. What's the score? Oh, I'm packing it in. Why are you packing it in? I'm not very good at it. It was really hard. It was manual picking in the business at the time. Says it was quite hard work as well. Like, but I wasn't very good at it. I didn't feel I was doing very well. I said, you were actually brilliant. I've had a look. You were actually really good at this. I actually need 2,000 of you.
Yeah.
You're fantastic at it. Yeah, I get it. I've picked, right? First day, your legs do ache a bit on manual picking. I'll tell you something. Day 4, you won't really notice, and then you got 3 days off, and then you come back and you shift. You won't barely notice next week, but you genuinely really good. I said, would you give it another go, and I'll pop and see you? Will you come back in tomorrow? He said, yeah. He said, my mum and 2 sisters were sharing a car with me, and they've had to pack the job in as well. Can they come back as well? I got 4 for 1 on my first call, right?
5 for the price of 1.
Wow. So I did it, right? And then I was like, this is treasure, right? So then I flipped it on its head. So then I created a model of recovery. Anybody that leaves, we're going to try and recover it.
Yeah.
So point 1. Point 2 is so then managers were having to like get on calls, right?
Yeah.
Then I changed every manager's job description for peak. So I said, change your footer on your email. You got a new job title. Doesn't matter what level you are, you're all retention managers now, right? And my main KPI that I'm going to measure is attrition by manager.
So what I like about it is it's actually a pretty brave thing to do, because the most natural senior leadership thing to do is to try and get across everything and become a higher level of managing everything. Yeah. What you're actually saying is, if this is a tapestry, if life is a tapestry, yeah, I've got to work out the thread to pull that will help these people. So there is a standing back part you first said. Then there's a diagnosis, identifying the right thread skill part. And then there's committing to actually go into the Gemba to sorting a problem, and having the confidence to know that if my gaffer comes and says, what are you working on? Well, I'm manning the phones. You can say, listen, trust me, this will make a difference. Now that's a different leadership style than I'm here to be senior or what everybody else does and just get across it better.
Yeah. I literally made that decision. I can't help you with this stuff, but because I can't. This building's 800,000 square foot, and you're running it day and night. Try. I'm not going to jump on a screen and chase your metrics. That business was well known for doing that, and people were great at it. And you know what? It was brilliant, because the behaviour on the shop floor between leaders and their teams changed over, and we learned so much about that in the longer term. But in peak, it was massive. We rolled it out European and then beyond, but the data spoke for itself. It was massive. We hired like hugely less, and hiring, I mean, this operation on its peak day would bring in 600 new employees, in the onboarding profile. And now you need to bring in 200 because you hadn't attrited before. It's like a game changer.
And the reason for changing their job titles to retention managers, was that to change their focus subconsciously?
Yeah. It was to say, crikey, he actually means it, right? The daily deep dive picked up the metrics. We talked about that when we should, and this is a constant thing. When I joined HelloFresh, one of the first things I did is separated the noise. It was a business that had grown rapidly. We needed an operating model. I separated the noise from my leadership. Like, what I wasn't going to do is spend every day firefighting every metric. I put in a really robust WBR. But to do that, I had to get back to which are the critical metrics. Are they recorded in the same way? Does everybody understand them? Are the definitions clear? Built that, automated it. And then when I'd done that, unless it was a fire burning, I talked about that on a Tuesday at 10 o'clock. And then the only escalations that came to me were true escalations, and we write rules for that and what's an escalation. Outside of that, I can be more strategic and think about how the business is driving. And that's really important in building an operating model.
Firstly, you mentioned one-way and two-way doors. Now, I recognize that as Amazon language, I think. Can you just explain one-way, two-way doors?
One-way and two-way doors. So a one-way door is a decision that you're going to make that when you've made it, you're stuck with it, or the costs of exiting that or the implications of exiting that are significant, right? A two-way door is we can make that decision and actually we can try it or we can pursue it because we think it's right. And actually, if we decide it's not the right decision, it's not going to damage the business or the team or whatever, that we can't reverse it. And this is critical in working with your teams. I think one is knowing which are one-way and two-way doors is absolutely critical. And then back to many of the things that we just talked about, actually, allowing your teams to play with the two-way doors. Don't restrict people on two-way doors unless there's a really good reason to do it. If it looks like an opportunity, let them pursue it. But also, make sure they don't go a long way in the wrong direction on a fast train, right? But as a leader, absolutely know which are your one-way doors, because that's where, and that's where some of the problems come, that appears in appraisals and different things. If you allowed a team member to step through a one-way door and then you're grumpy about it afterwards and it creates a falling out, that's not ideal, really. So I think as a team, and we talk about leadership a lot, actually, but when I talk about leadership, I put myself in a team. Sometimes my team might be the SMT or the board. Sometimes my team might be the OPEX team. Sometimes my team that I'm in might be another team. I might not be in it every day working closely, but when I have dialogue with that team, I put myself in their space. Yes, I give them some leadership stuff, but also I sit in their seat and understand things from their perspective. But one-way and two-way doors is really important. And you have to protect the one-way doors because that's where you're going to hurt business. And you know what? Like, businesses do it. I mean, I dropped a LinkedIn post the other day where I was talking about automating before you're ready to automate. That's a great example of, go spend tens of millions on a process that you don't understand and make it so you can't exit. People do that, right?
Well, you see, there's a whole thing behind that about ROI versus ROA. How do you get everybody to think like a founder? They've got a skin in the game as if they own the business. So if you own the business and it's your money or it's your family's money, then you are more likely to think return on assets. You're going to want to squeeze what you've got, understand it, squeeze the losses. But if you're a professional manager who's come through uni, maybe done your professional stuff, all you're interested in is net present values and paybacks and what can I get for my capex? That's ROI thinking. We want ROA thinking, don't we? Not ROI.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, three things to say. The two awards that we mentioned earlier, no, they did come with some investment, but one was going to have investment anyway, and we were able to invest less, which is a real ROA topic. The other one, we did have to invest, but longer term, we invested less. But it was on that basis. It was on that basis that my focus was, in both cases, these were fulfillment centers. How do I drive more throughput and complexity through the minimum amount of space? So understand fixed and variable cost, and how do I drive something here? And the Amazon door desk was because they were building 1.2 million square foot buildings, and I designed a 450,000 square foot building that could do the same throughput. So it meant that they could convert the 1.2 million to much higher throughputs, and it was bizarre numbers. and it was on roughly a 19% lower VCPU, variable cost per unit. But to your point of ROI, I've got a new acronym for you: return on avoidance. Return on
Oh, go on.
avoiding investing,
Yeah.
right? That's my new take on ROA. So how do I
So
get
is
a
that
return on
the opportunity cost
assets?
of the
By
money you didn't spend?
avoiding more investment in new assets. Because you're right, assets are the number of businesses where a business will invest in, let's do the simple one, another building, right? They're growing and expanding and they go, we need more floor space.
Yeah.
And the first question should be, how do I get 50% more throughput? Whatever that is, manufacturing, logistics, doesn't matter, like supply chain stuff. How do I get more throughput through the space that I have? And when I built the building at Amazon, the tagline was just to focus people's attention. If we haven't got a skew in the toilet system, we haven't filled the building enough. Well, that was just to frame people's thinking of Mark's serious when he says, because I talk about cubic usage. You know,
Yeah.
the buildings that you could fly a drone around. I'm saying I'm not going to build another building if I can fly a drone around this one. I'm going to find out how to get throughput through the building I have. But I use the
Makes
toilets.
sense.
It doesn't work in a food business, by the way. You don't get doing that. But you know, just winning hearts and minds of people understanding. Mark isn't kidding when he says, how do we utilize the space that we have? And that's about cubic use is interesting. Mezzanine floors can be expensive, but also velocity. Velocity is really important, and that gets right into the lean arena of
Oh, it does flow, whipping material through the business,
you know,
compressing the timeline. We got about 5 minutes. I'm going to ask you
yeah,
5 questions, okay?
go for it.
The lazy question is to ask you, as a leader, how do you spot the next leader? Yeah. I don't want to ask that question. The question I want to ask is, if you are not a leader, but you suspect you might be able to, or even you don't suspect, how can you spot yourself?
Oh, how do you spot yourself? I come back. I mean, when Howard May, I hadn't managed people, and he gave me my first factory, and I hadn't even managed people before that. So, um, but at that time, I reflect on my situation. I went, I can do this. When he asked me, I didn't have a clue what to do first, next, quite frankly, and dived into it. But how do you spot it? I think great question. I think it's from impact, right? Just think about the small things. Think about the small things where you have positively influenced somebody, right? Where you've given somebody some guidance, you've given somebody some feedback. Somebody's asked you for advice and they've taken it and they've thanked you. That's leadership, right? If you found
Yeah.
yourself in that situation, and many and most people have had some form of those experiences, it might be within their comfort zone or something that, you know, that's why it happened. But
Yeah.
that's an example of leadership. So I think, don't think big. Oh, crikey, I need to manage a team of 50, or imagine that's not what it's about. Because we talked a lot in here about managing teams of 15,000 by focusing on the small stuff, right?
Yeah.
So just reflect on yourself and think about the small examples where you've given somebody some feedback or guidance, inside or outside work, doesn't matter, right? That's leadership.
Great. Good. Thank you, Mark. Second question. There's a fella I follow called Scott Galloway. He's a professor at NYU in the States. I think he has a lot of good things to say. His definition of leadership is doing the right things when it's hard. What do you
Yes.
think of that?
I 100% believe in that, because I think it's where I've seen some of the negative behaviors of people doing the wrong things when it gets hard. And I was talking to a business that I was talking to last week about my leadership style has a moral thread through it, and that's how I sleep at night. Um, I think it's interesting in the world at the moment. I think we could talk about that topic forever, but I do believe in, if you want to deliver long-term performance, then doing the right things when it's hard is critical. And the easy thing is to do the wrong things when it's hard. As a human, and somebody called me a humanist recently, doing the right things is really important, and it does deliver long term, and it's the only way to deliver long term. But there are
Great.
short term pressures on. You read a lot in the press about short term pressures on businesses, but where do they come from? I think what's interesting to quote Jeff Bezos, actually, just to pick up that, early days, everybody's seen that video 100 times of in laughing on an interview where, you know, you're building this business to make a profit and you're famous for it.
Yeah.
He could do that, you know, for you know, for the reasons that we won't get into financially in terms of share price and whatever. But and let's not get into analyzing Amazon as a business. However, he was doing things for the long term of the business. He was building an operating model for a need that worked, and he laughed off. He laughed off the stock market conversations, and actually people bought into him and actually bought into his long term journey. And I think some businesses find it hard to have that conversation with their stakeholders that looks more than 12 months ahead. And I think actually, if you sit on a board, have the confidence to talk more than 1 year ahead, because actually the results in the 2 to 3 years will come better.
And the focus to concentrate on a superpower, in his case, a delivery model. I'm going to be the only person who cracks a delivery model. Right. Three more questions. So these last three questions are related. I'm going to ask you for one piece of advice for a struggling leader, a complacent leader, so a leader where everything seems okay, the sun is shining, and a new leader. So let's start. One piece of advice for a struggling leader.
Everybody struggles at some point. But in life, we've all got our own stories. In work, we've had our own challenges. So, well, one piece of advice would definitely be, because when you're in it, it's the biggest thing. And I've been there. I can give endless examples, which you don't have time for today. We'll pick them up on the next podcast. But I've been there multiple times in my career. Like, we all face it. So I think, first of all, everybody goes through it. And everybody goes through it. Doesn't matter who you are, multiple times in the career. So try not to hyper focus and actually talk to somebody you trust and get some support. Because I say trust because maybe it's your leader that you're struggling with and you don't trust. So go talk to somebody you trust and go work it through. But we've all been there, and there is another side to it all, and it never seems as bad on the other side. So talk to someone.
Fair play, thank you.
Work through it. But we've all been there multiple times in our careers and lives.
Yeah, sunshine follows rain, doesn't it? As sure as rain follows sunshine. What about the complacent leader where everything's okay?
I think, first of all, every business needs strong executors, right? However, a lot of businesses have appraisal models that don't work for people that tread water as well. So it's an interesting topic. I think I believe in life that you should enjoy what you're doing. If I look at when I changed my career at times, it's because I hunger for a challenge, and if I haven't felt challenged, I do get bored. I probably get troublesome. I meddle with things that are not mine because I'm trying to find that stimulus, I guess. So it is about knowing yourself, but like, you might be comfortable, you might be having an impact, and that might be okay if your impact is positive. But I think just ask, are you happy with what you're doing? Could you do more? And again, go and have those conversations. I grew up, obviously, many years ago, and I come up with a term the other day that I haven't heard since I was much younger, which is a change is as good as the rest. You don't hear that anymore.
Yeah. No.
You know, when I was younger, you didn't have a sabbatical. Sabbaticals didn't exist. You didn't take time off. You would say change is as good as the rest. But I think it's true, right? Whether it's a project, you know, it doesn't have to be that you have to change your job or change your company, but go get a project, you know, in your business that can get that excitement back. If you want to, it might be a time in your life actually where you're recuperating, you know, that you're taking some time for the next push, but just know where you are, know what you want, know what you want to do, but don't be afraid to go get a project, go do something else, inside or outside work. It's, but it might be that you're in a stage with your family that it's the right thing that you take in a step. Everybody's got their own stories, we said earlier, but from a career perspective, challenge yourself. But now is the time, right?
Yeah.
You are at work and you are not building stuff using AI and getting under the skin and understanding tools and learning. You should be, right?
Yeah, you're going to be left behind, aren't you?
Now is the time where we should all be doing that, and it's hard, and you know, and we could talk about that one forever.
So could that be your advice for a new leader, or am I putting words in your mouth? The final question: what's your advice for a new leader?
Yeah, I think a lot. a lot of businesses are either claiming or they're AI first at the moment, and I think everybody wants to jump on that, but none of us probably are, quite frankly, truthfully. Some are progressing well, but we don't know what we don't know yet, and we're on a curve. The biggest challenge for a new leader is there's always too much to learn and there's always too much to do.
Yeah.
So some of the basic tools of carving up your working week, finding out why you are not doing the things that you should be doing, allocating time to those things that you really want to do, and don't let, my final line, I guess, don't let talking to your team be the one that drops off your list.
Nice. And that takes us all the way back to the beginning, doesn't it? Mark, superb. Thank you. I really enjoyed that conversation. And thanks for covering a lot of ground and being very honest as you did it.